Howdy folks, welcome back to yet another horror movie review. Last time we discussed what I think is one of the greatest Dracula adaptations of all time. And today, we'll be looking at probably one of the most okay horror comedies to ever grace the silver screen. That's right, it's time for The Stuff, right here on Schlocktober. To start, let's go over a few of the basics, shall we? In 1985, the horror comedy satire film known as The Stuff was released. It was written and directed by Larry Cohen, who is known for such films as It's Alive, Q the Winged Serpent, and Maniac Cop. His directing and writing credits were met with mixed reviews, but I can say that what he made was almost always unique in some way. The film was distributed by New World Pictures and featured a runtime of 87 minutes with an estimated budget of $1.7 million. Now, I couldn't find the exact box office numbers, but from what I can tell, the film was not very popular at the time it released. Larry Cohen seemed to be upset that this film was marketed as a horror film, as opposed to being a satirical comedy piece like he had intended. Personally, I'm glad it was marketed as a horror film because it gives me a chance to talk about it with all of you. And what's more terrifying than capitalism after all? With that said, let's get into the story, shall we? To quote from IMDb, "A delicious, mysterious goo that oozes from the earth is marketed as a newest dessert sensation. But the tasty treat rots more than teeth when zombie-like snackers who only want to consume more of the strange substance at any cost begin infesting the world." As you can tell from this description, the satire is already bleeding out. And while watching this film, I found that to be the most engaging element. Because if you watch it expecting just a straight-up horror film, you will be sorely disappointed. It's the combination of horror and satire that elevates it from being just another B-movie into something that has a bit more bite to it. Get it? Although, if I'm being honest, the bite isn't very strong. The film unfortunately suffers from drawbacks in editing that I simply can't ignore. According to Larry Cohen, the film received numerous edits that trimmed down its runtime and most likely resulted in context being removed from some scenes. Sometimes, characters just sort of do things without a proper explanation. Such as a young boy named Jason, who is played by Scott Bloom, who is now an older man, running from home and suddenly appearing in a grocery store wreaking havoc. It felt like there was a scene missing that should have shown us his thought process. While it can be pieced together why he does what he does at the store, it still would have been nice to get a scene where he makes up his mind to start knocking the stuff all over the place. But it can be said that this cutting of extra fat from the film does speed up its pace by a considerable margin given its relatively short runtime. But I still would have liked a bit more build-up to be done in the film as things start out strange. I want to say the last 20 or so minutes is when things get really nuts.
Attention, the main gate has been penetrated. Outsiders are entering the factory area. Do not resist them. Follow the agreed upon course of action. Repeat, follow the agreed upon course of action.
I suppose it's better for a film to start out running than slowly break out into a sprint. This isn't an A24 film after all. But yeah, the plot isn't the strongest, so what about the characters? The Stuff is chock full of bonkers characters that help fit within its more satirical view of consumerism. Of these characters, my personal favorite was our protagonist, David Mo Rutherford, who is played by Michael Moriarty. I find David to be interesting because he doesn't start out as your standard protagonist, but rather as an industrial saboteur. I think Michael had a lot of fun playing this character, and it shows through his acting ability. A special mention goes to Garrett Morris, who played Chocolate Chip Charlie in the film, the man whose hands are registered weapons. It's a shame that he wasn't in the movie much, but what little of him there is a very special treat. Now, in terms of performances that could have used a bit of improvement, I unfortunately have to pick on the then child actor Scott Bloom who played Jason. Now, don't get me wrong, the kid really did try, but compared to everyone else, his performance was just lacking that sort of gravitas that everyone else had. But overall, I liked the characters in this film. Their acting wasn't Oscar-worthy, mind you, but it was definitely a lot better than what I was expecting going into this film. As we continued to discuss the movie, I feel that the overall look of the sets was also decent. I think my favorite sets are the industrialized factories and mining facilities that show up in the movie. It adds more to the world building of the Stuff, and showcases how consumerism subsists off of steel and the exploitation of nature. Or something like that, I don't know. I ain't good at identifying metaphors. As for the costuming, I thought people looked decent. I really liked the plain yellow jumpsuits that the Stuff employees wore. It really helped them pop a bit more than just being your standard lackeys being controlled by alien parasitic marshmallow cream. Moving on, a highlight for me were some of the effects used in this film. One of which became obvious to me was the old rotating room trick that you may recognize from A Nightmare on Elm Street. There was also puppetry that was used to simulate the Stuff moving, although it was a bit wacky looking. But that's okay because I personally love puppetry anytime it's used in a film. Now, something that I also appreciated in this movie was the score. Anthony Gueffin conducted the main score, and it is very cheesy sounding, but in a good way. There are also numerous jingles used throughout the film, which were composed by Richard Seaman. Those jingles are quite the earworm, I might add. So, overall, would I recommend The Stuff? And my answer is a bit mixed. While the story and characters are all over the place, there certainly was time and effort that was placed into this film. I think Larry Cohen, based upon interviews that he did on the film, really wanted to make something that satirizes and brings to attention the wanton consumerist culture that we find ourselves living in. I always feel that horror is one of the best ways that we can engage with discussions on societal issues, and The Stuff definitely has things to say that maybe we should listen to. But as purely a piece of entertainment memorabilia, I would say that there are much better films out there. I say give this a watch if you have nothing else really going on. And who knows, once you have a taste, you may not have enough of the stuff. Howdy folks, thank you all so much for watching this video. I got one more film left to talk about this month, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. Be sure to keep your eyes, and not your face, peeled for it. And if you enjoyed this video, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. With all that said, I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Halloween munchkins from Dunkin' Donuts. Grab some, if you can.